Welcome to Dimensional Shift, where we explore and actively deprogram ourselves, seek the truth of reality through expanding our perceptions, and focus on full remembrance of our true selves. As we begin to connect to our true selves, we will also see the truth of this illusory reality and the way it controls us through our manipulated perceptions. As soon as we fully remember our true selves, we will also see the enemy for what it is and how to rebalance the system by freeing ourselves and assisting others to do the same, creating a domino effect into the evolution of human consciousness. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Dimensional Shift for Starseeds. I recently had a question about how do you stand in your power? And I really had to give that some thought because it's something that I started doing at some point last year. It was a very gradual process of moving into that. So I was a little unsure how to answer that. So this episode is what I came up with when I started exploring how do you stand in your power? And to me, it's primarily about your energy field. So today's episode is energetic survive and thrive states. The first thing is, I think it's important to note that while these are something you can identify with and will help you define yourself and help you learn and understand yourself so that you can stand in your power, eventually the process is to let go of the fact that it means anything about you and that you have to be that way forever. So use these labels, concepts, ideas while they're helpful, and then start looking at ways that you can let them go so that they don't mean anything about you and you don't have to feel like you've been pigeonholed into a label or an identity that may not always be true. The first important thing to note is that these energy states and their thrive and survive states are not permanent, and they can change depending on the environment that you're in and who you're interacting with. Especially if you have an open energy field, you are much more likely to match an energy field of somebody else based on what their energy field is and whether or not they're in a survive or thrive state. So all that being said, let's launch right into what the energy field characteristics of each are and what they mean. So there's two states of energy fields that are more like a permanent tendency, I guess you could say, that I've come across. The first thing we want to say is that these don't actually align to whether or not you're introverted or extroverted, or if you identify as an empath. That can be an easy leap to make, but from my experience with meeting people in general, they don't always match up. There's two types of energy fields. One would be an open energy field and one is a closed energy field. And what this means in essence is that the person with an open energy field has a more expansive field. It's more nebulous on the edges. There's very little definition on the edges. There's very little boundaries on the edges, and the energy tends to taper or diffuse off. For closed energy fields, the boundaries are very defined. The energy is much closer to the body, and the energy doesn't tend to diffuse off. It's in a much more controlled state around the body. The characteristics of having an open energy field, again, can sound like an extrovert, but it's not essentially the same thing. I have an open energy field, and I am 90% introverted on the MBTI test. So it doesn't necessarily align because introversion and extroversion are actually cognitive processing. Totally separate podcast for that. Maybe someday. The characteristics of having an open energy field are that you tend to match other people, whether that be an open energy field or a closed energy field. You tend to give them back what they're giving you. And you often have easy conversations because of this. Well, it appears easy anyway. People might often say that you're easy to talk to or that you're grounded. And that just means that you're giving them whatever they want to be given. Your energy field is matching whatever it is that they're needing at the time. The problem is, it's easy to lose yourself in this. Their interests become your interests. You find that there's very few boundaries between how you define yourself and the things that other people define themselves as. You kind of begin to identify with everything. And that's the first step in an open energy field's process of defining self, is first you have to define yourself as everything. You learn to define yourself by others. You use others as a reference point, whether that be the way they define themselves, whether that be the way they define you, or whether that be how they define the world and how they interact with the world. It's primarily their viewpoints, and whether that's a projection or accurate remains to be seen, right? Their viewpoints are the starting place when you learn how to define yourself and to start standing in your power. Open energy fields thrive when they are expressing themselves and when they are open. So I've noticed for myself recently at my job, I've been working at my job for about 3 months now. I have to be in a very contracted state while I'm there because of the nature of the job and interacting with the other people. My energy field gets very contracted, partly because of anxiety and partly that causes the anxiety. And it's very difficult to be productive and to feel like I'm doing well there. When I can express myself with people that I feel safe with and that who are supportive and that I'm comfortable with in general, which is primarily open-minded people who will listen without judgment, then I feel like I'm in a thrive state and I'm able to adequately explore myself and who I am, and I can throw out there, well, hey, I'm an introvert, and they can throw back, well, hey, are you sure? Are you an introvert all the time? Does it matter? All of those kinds of questions without judgment and without feeling like it has to be the right answer. I go into a survive state when I feel like I have a high performance expectation, which isn't to say I don't want to do a good job. I think that could be part of the problem, is I've always identified with the perfectionist, which means that trying to reach the perfection puts me into a contracted state because it's an anxiety state. So any place that I feel or perceive that I'm misunderstood, that I'm in a high pressure situation and that I have that pressure to perform, and any kind of conditional situations. And what I mean by this is not that it's black and white, and not that the expectations are clearly defined, because those would be more for closed energy fields, but more like when I feel like the judgment or understanding depends on how I perform or how I am perceived or how I'm judged. So for example, workplaces are very difficult for me primarily because I feel like any minute the workplace can be taken away based on any subjective criteria that the boss or whoever decides to apply to whatever situation comes up. My sister and I are complete opposites on the Myers-Briggs personality test. I'm an INFP. She is an ESTJ. One of the big differences is that we are unable to agree on looking at a situation in which someone does a wrong action or makes the wrong choice based on just the data that you have based on their choice. For example, when she first learned about her MBTI type, she was given the example of, you own a store and you find out that one of your cashiers has been stealing from you. What do you do? And her answer was, well, you fire them. And when she asked me, my answer was, well, why are they stealing? She goes, what do you mean, why are they stealing? I said, well, are you not paying enough that they can't feed their kids? Are they stealing for drugs? I mean, these answers matter because, yes, she stole from you, but if she can't afford to feed her kids, then maybe you should be looking at why. She said, no, she stole from you. There was a complete disconnect between her and me. And relating this back to what I'm talking about, these conditional situations, is if I feel like my particular conditions aren't taken into account when a decision is made, if I feel like a number, I'm in a contracted state, because then I feel like I'm not seen as a person, and that any of my life, my personality, none of it's taken into account. And that makes me feel very anxious and afraid. Again, like that those consequences can be put into place just based on a decision that I've done something wrong. So going into the closed energy fields, these people are more reserved. They have a need to know and trust someone before opening up. It's hard to get to know others, and they define others based on their self. And that's not to say they're self-centered or egotistical, but whenever they are deciding about another person, it's based on how they feel about that part of themselves. These people tend to be more orderly, more linear, more balanced. They can look at a situation and make a judgment based on the data, which is important. Not all of us can be subjective and look at the person. I think that that's an important distinction to make, that both of these energy fields and types are needed in the world. Their boundaries are more defined. And like I said, they define others by self, whereas the open energy field defines self by others. A closed thrive state is in performance. There are known expectations. The work and the timeline is linear, and they are able to measure out their energy and their time and keep things in an ordered fashion in their head so that they can perform like they want to. They have the space and time to get to know somebody before extensive interaction. I think that's really important for closed energy fields, is they reserve the right to judge you, or not judge, that's probably not a great word. They reserve the right to further a relationship with you until they know you better. Open energy fields tend to rush into those types of things where they're just going to assume that you're a good person and you're going to do the right thing and that they can trust you, which often ends in hurt, right? Or they're on the opposite end where they distrust everybody. Closed energy fields can come across as distrusting, but it's just that they're reserving judgment. They feel safest when they're with understanding people who allow them to size up people first and get to know people before they make that judgment of, yeah, I'd like to have some kind of relationship with you, or no, I don't think this is going to work. People meeting an open energy field that kind of rushes into things is stressful for them. Survival states for closed energy fields is expression, and it's when their energy fields have to be more open to others. So sharing too much about themselves before they're ready. Emotional vulnerability. Going to therapy for closed energy fields is really hard. Going to talk to themselves, especially to a stranger, is a very difficult thing, and it may take them several sessions to warm up to somebody before they're able to talk about anything vulnerable. And then people who don't respect their boundaries. Anybody who comes across as too domineering, or someone who jumps into trying to make a relationship too quickly, that's going to result in stress for them. And the last thing I want to talk about is what it's like in a relationship between two of these energy fields interacting. So first we have open and an open energy field. This relationship can be really supportive, fun, energetic. It can be honest and expressive, and it can create a safe space for people to explore themselves in a supportive environment. It can also be a codependent relationship, meaning neither one of them knows themselves. They don't take responsibility for their healing, their actions. They blame each other for everything, and yet they're stuck feeding off of each other's energy field. There's a sense of over-reliance here where, again, you're just shunting all the responsibility off on the other person. And there's a big sense of just losing yourself in that other person. Not knowing who you are, because everything that you think you are is actually the other person. Neither of the people are very well defined, and they lose each other in the other person's energy. An open-closed relationship can be where the closed person helps the open person learn and maintain boundaries, which is really important. A lot of times, open energy fields can feel very used and abused, especially if you're an empath too, where you feel like you're always giving and healing and transmuting others' energy when you don't always want to be. And so a closed energy field can help an open energy field learn to self-define and learn to say, nope, not ready for that, or no, I don't want to do that, or something like that. And the open can help the closed energy field learn to open up, learn about themselves and how to express themselves in a safe, supportive way. Or it can be the closed energy field feeling violated and attacked because of the open not honoring the boundaries, not listening to the person being more reserved and needing a little more space and time, or the open feeling invalidated and rejected because they're not getting the feedback that they need and want. They're not getting that connection that they feel like they want or should have right at the beginning of a relationship. These types of relationships are often a narcissist and someone who feels like a victim. And it doesn't have to be one or the other. The closed doesn't have to be the narcissist, and the open doesn't have to be the victim, and the open doesn't have to be the narcissist. Like, it doesn't matter. Either can be either. The big point is that one is more dominating over the other in general, and that can turn into a very unhealthy thing. When you have a closed and a closed in a relationship, it can be a really safe space to learn how to define yourself and others. It can be a really great and supportive way to have a relationship that doesn't require you giving too much of yourself, and to start out slow and to learn about the other person and learn about how you want to interact with that person. There can be a lot of miscommunication that leads to hurt feelings, and when you don't talk about the issues that come up, or you think that the other person will bring it forward first, there can be kind of this passive-aggressive thing on both sides where maybe one person's waiting for the other to notice that they're mad, that kind of thing. It can be where one person plays a martyr, where they're always being dramatic, and it's almost like being the victim, but doing for others in a way that makes the other feel bad for you doing it. And somebody who always feels like they're being made out to be the bad guy. These relationships can fall into these unhealthy categories if you're not really aware of what your energy state is and what state your energy state is, which is kind of a silly thing to say. But if you're not aware of if you're in a thrive or survive state, then those parts of you that you maybe need to work on a little bit can come out a little more. If you found this episode helpful or insightful, please share it with a friend and leave a review or comment. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. I host twice weekly open discussions on the podcast topic on our Discord server. If you'd like to join, head to dimensionalshifter.com/Discord. If you're on Reddit, come join the subreddit r/dimensionalshifters or send me a DM. My username is dimensionalshifter. Keep deprogramming, keep connecting, keep listening to your intuition. This is it. This is what we've been searching for our whole lives. Connection to our true selves.